Good morning, everybody. This is an SF Live news special. Not breaking news because the news is already 40 hours old, but a news special. I'm speaking with Dan Wilton. He's the CEO of First Mining Gold. And as always, be reminded, use hashtag AskFF for your questions. And as an FYI as well, this is going to be a shortened format. This is not a full SF Live episode where we go into detail with the projects. This is really about the recent transaction with Treasury Metals. So we're going to keep it focused and on point here today. If you have any questions relating to that, please use the hashtag and we'll see if we can get to them in our shortened format. Until then, let's switch over to Mr. Dan Wilton. Dan, how are you doing this morning?
I'm well, Kai. Thanks for having me on again.
Oh, you must have been having a crazy couple 48 hours here with the transaction news. Run us through it real quick.
Yeah, it's been a very busy time. Listen, we're really excited to be combining our Goldlund project with the Goliath project at Treasury Metals. This is one of those deals that we're often accused in the mining industry of sort of looking over the fence and never giving the other guy's project next door the credit it deserves. But we're pretty happy to be able to put these two things together. We think we're creating something really, really exciting here.
No, exactly. And as you announced Wednesday after market, just right after market, you're merging Goliath and Goldlund. Run us through the details of the transaction real quick.
Yeah, so we're merging Goliath and Goldlund basically by having Treasury Metals acquire our subsidiary that owns Goldlund. In exchange for that, we are going to get 130 million Treasury shares, 35 million Treasury Metals warrants, 3-year warrants with a 50-cent strike. A 1.5% NSR that a 0.5% of that can be bought back for $5 million and about $5 million in milestone payments as Goldlund moves through permitting and into production. So this whole combination means we become the largest shareholder of Treasury. We and our shareholders will end up owning in excess of 40% of it, about 43, I think, based on the number of shares outstanding right now. Importantly, it leaves us with a lot of exposure and upside because we really do believe that once we're able to actually wrap some economics around this project, we're going to see substantial value re-rating here.
That's important as well because unlocking value for First Mining has been key since you took on the helm at the company, right?
So we've been trying, and the other part of that is we are going to be distributing 70 million shares and 35 million warrants out directly to our shareholders. So all of our shareholders are going to become shareholders of Treasury, which we're excited about.
No, this is fantastic because it's a special dividend. But there's still a lot of question marks around the deal, and I don't mean that in a negative sense. There's just a lot of questions that still need to be answered in terms of like transaction details. Like you mentioned, there'll be shares and warrants distributed, and give us a little more detail on how you plan to do that and whether you've refined that process a little more.
Yeah, I mean, still subject to a little bit more analysis, legal and tax analysis mostly, but essentially sometime between 6 and 12 months from the transaction closing. And part of that's driven by U.S. securities registration processes. But sometime between 6 and 12 months, we'll basically have a shareholder meeting because we'll need shareholder approval to distribute. And the way we're thinking we're going about it is basically as a plan of arrangement where you will end up with a share of First Mining and the shares and warrants of Treasury. So think of it kind of like a spinco. In the way that in a lot of M&A deals, you'll have a spinco that goes out to the shareholders. It's the same process that you go through. Basically, there will be a circular, there will be a record date. So if you're a shareholder of First Mining on the record date, then you'll be entitled to get the shares. And that record date will be, probably 30-ish days before we have the vote, and then shortly after the vote, the distribution.
Question, like AGM was scheduled when? And did you have
our AGM? Yeah, our AGM is scheduled for I think it's the 16th of June. Now that you ask me, I'm uncertain. It's the 15th or 16th. I don't have it right in front of me. Yeah, it's like next week, the week after next. So
okay, no, because I know they're all coming up right now, and since you need special approval, I'm not sure if that's part of the agenda just yet, right? So you might actually need a special one in August or July, late July.
No, and like I said, Kai, this is going to be somewhere between 6 and 12 months out.
So, and you won't be able to get out of it again anyway, so because you announced it. So,
no, it's true. It's true. But I think it's that distribution has a lot of benefits to everyone. It's going to broaden the Treasury shareholder base. We have a great shareholder base, split between Europe, Canada, and the US. Very active trading. So I think this does great things for their share trading liquidity as well.
No, perfect. And then now that the dust has settled a little bit, what has been some of the feedback you've been getting on the deal?
It's been, you don't want to say universally positive, but almost universally positive. Just the logic of this deal is so clear when you have a project with a permitted, with their federal environmental approvals for a mine and mill, and then you have, 1.7 million ounce resource, 20 kilometers, 25 kilometers away. The risk that having multiple sources feeding a mill, the risk that takes out of a project development is immense. And so it's going to take us some time to get that, the real technical detail articulated to our investors, because we have to take the combined project through an updated PEA. There's still permitting processes to go. There's provincial permitting at Goliath. There's the permitting at Goldlund. But I think as soon as we can articulate this to the shareholders and the market, we're very excited about what we think that this can become. We think this is going to present itself as one of the most exciting development projects in the sector. I mean, like Springpole, which we think is the other really exciting development project. Lest we lose focus, right? It's a problem. I spent all this time talking about, how amazing this is. We don't want people to lose focus on the fact that we've got a 5 million ounce project going through PFS and permitting, a couple 100 kilometers north of this too.
And that's one of the reasons why you did the deal, because you wanted a clearer corporate focus on Springpole as well. So
I think that's it. And the focus and, really being able to point to the value and to the value of Goldlund. It's not, we've talked about this for a long time. We don't get a lot of value for the other assets in our portfolio, but we think, between this transaction and between the deal that we've done with Pickle Crow, if you look at, what the value of our partner implies on our shareholding there, I think we've surfaced in the last couple of months almost $100 million that you can point to and say, like, this is the value of these two assets in our 6 assets in the portfolio. And that's not including Springpole. So, today that's half or a little bit more than half of our market cap.
Yeah. Our format allows to go a little reach out a little wider, discuss a little wider topics as well. Like, I want to go through the art of the deal, because for me personally, it's always quite interesting. How do you come up with a valuation? Let's say, okay, we're getting 130 million shares of Treasury. Like, why not 120? Why not 135? How did you end up with the certain numbers, and what metrics did you use? And run us also maybe through the timeline of a deal like that, because people, like, they see the press release Wednesday after market, is like, oh, they must have talked this morning, right? Which is not the case.
Oh, they just agreed. Here you go. So, I think I got my first call on this idea the second day that I was in my chair as CEO in January 2019. And then took a bit of time. The first time I went to Goldlund, we also stopped by Goliath because Greg and the team were kind of in the neighborhood and thought it would make sense for us all to get together. And so kind of went to see it there and had a real appreciation for, their project and where the infrastructure was. But deals like this take a while to come together. And I think what happened was ultimately, how you get to these percentages, and it comes down kind of to the deal structure in this one. We were coming at it from a percentage of, there's lots of pluses and minuses if you were putting these things together, but, what's in the range of a 50-50 deal. And so for us to get in that range, it was important for Treasury that, they sort of saw Goliath or Goldlund as earlier stage and needed some more de-risking. So we ended up structuring the ownership levels. And for us, that was really about having that ownership level. It's about, continuing to have that ongoing exposure, because we really do believe the combined project is going to be worth more. So that led to warrants, that led to the milestone payments. And us having an NSR was a really important component for us, so that we had continued exposure to what we think is really, really strong exploration upside at Goldlund going forward.
No, and you could monetize that royalty as well at some point if you needed to for the development of Springpole, for example.
Yeah, not surprisingly, we've already had a couple of calls on it. But
That was one of my
no,
questions.
we're not in a hurry to do that today. No, for sure. There's still, we're drilling at Goldlund right now, and continuing to have some really interesting results.
Yeah,
So
no,
yeah,
you're not at the end of the rope
we've
there.
got
So
years ahead of us on that one. That royalty is going to be worth a lot more.
okay, and sort of because we got time to ask that question, like why didn't you buy Treasury? Because market cap wise, you actually had them outgunned. So why not include Goliath in your portfolio?
Yeah, I think, Kai, that comes down in the end to that issue of focus. And important to us in this transaction is, Treasury becomes, this combined project becomes self-funding. We have continued to be supported by our shareholders to move Springpole forward, but us finding really meaningful dollars to advance another development project that's moving toward its permitting decisions along the same time frame at some point, that just from a human capital perspective, from confusing the story, I think the value of this combined company still would have been lost behind Springpole, because Springpole is just such a sizable asset, and with the NAV that it has, I think the value would have been lost behind it. And the other thing that was important from our shareholder standpoint is, we have direct exposure to this new combined project, but we don't take any dilution to our interest at Springpole. So had we bought Treasury, and the market cap, it would have been between whatever, call it somewhere between a third to a half of the pro forma company. The Treasury shareholders would have ended up receiving that percentage of Springpole by definition. So for us, this is the best of all worlds. This gets it self-funded. It's got dedicated management. It's got an ability that you can really shine a light on what the value of it is. And I think it's the best deal to give us the opportunity to focus, our time and energy and capital on the real goal for us, which we all understand, which is surfacing the value of
And
Springpole.
you mentioned you're going to stay, or you're going to go down to 19.9% at one point as a shareholder of Treasury after you spin out,
Yep.
or spin out the shares to your shareholders.
Yep.
Are you planning to stay pro rata? Is there something we can talk about already?
No, I think by definition for us, a big part of this was it becoming a self-funding entity. So I wouldn't expect that we're going to be putting any more capital into it as First Mining Gold. As Dan Wilton, an investor, I might have some interest given where we think this is going, might have some interest in participating as a shareholder. But no, as First Mining, I think our intention is, we're not, we will be diluted down as the company raises the money to move forward. And a big part of the distribution is for us to not be an overhang on the stock, essentially. So, this is, I think, the best way that we can get a lot of that share ownership directly in the hands of our shareholders. Not just share ownership, but the warrant ownership. And those warrants are going to be listed. They're going to be listed in Toronto and OTC in the US. So we're pretty excited about that too, because I think there's going to be a lot of interest in trying to get their hands on a warrant like that.
No, that's great. That's unlocking quite a bit of value and giving back to the shareholders as well. So that's great. They should be happy, and the stock reacted accordingly yesterday. So unfortunately today, thanks to the gold price drop this morning, it's looking a bit different. But other than that, congrats on the deal. Run us through the next dates that are coming up, and then we can wrap this up here as well.
Yeah, sure. So we don't need a shareholder vote on our side, but Treasury does, because of the number of shares that they are going to be issuing. So they will be preparing a circular and ultimately getting that out to their shareholders, aiming for a shareholder vote early August and closing, early to mid-August. So sometime before September, we're going to have created the next great 3 million ounce gold project just off the Trans-Canada Highway that no one's ever heard of.
I actually got one last question for you. I just thought of that.
Yes, sir.
Are you going to continue spending exploration dollars at Goldlund from your treasury?
We are spending right now. We have a drill program. We remobbed a crew out to Goldlund last week. So we have drills turning right now, and you don't just shut off programs like that.
You'd lose a season.
But we're also not waiting till the deal closes to get our ducks in a row in order to figure out exactly what the plan and path is for us to get to that PEA. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. But importantly, our team, we're very excited, and we are going to roll up our sleeves, particularly in the first year here, as part of a technical committee. We're going to have 3 of 7 directors on the board. So all of those things, I think, are going to go to really highlight how we can continue to help add value here.
No,
so
fantastic.
We're excited about that.
Dan, thanks for coming on this early in the morning. Really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm used to it, Kai.
Well, I've been up for a couple hours already, so I'm into my 3rd cup of coffee or something, so all good.
Yeah, I know. It's you look more awake than I do. That's
just
for sure.
optics.
You got a better lens on the camera.
All right, Dan, have a great weekend. Congrats again on the deal, and we'll talk very soon.